Hi, I'm Jude. I'm from a website called headfi.org. And today we're going to talk about high-end headphones, kind of where it is now, where it's going. We have a really awesome panel today, so I want to let them do all the talking because we have some interesting discussions to have here. So we're going to approach it from two angles, where headphone audio can go, how it can get better. We're going to approach it from the software standpoint, the music, the recordings, and then the hardware. And so we have some guys here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting with you, Tyle.
Hi, I'm Tyle Hertzen. Is this thing on?
There we are now.
Just barely. Editor at innerfidelity.com, which is a sister publication to Stereophile. This is an online publication only, and we focus on headphones and personal audio.
Hi, my name is Paul Barton, and I'm the founder of PSB Speakers, and I'm the guinea pig for a representative of speaker companies that are getting into headphones. So this is our foray into headphones in the most recent period of time.
My name is Mark Waldrop, and I represent, I guess, the software side of things. We're a record company. I'm over in the Evergreen room, and we have been recording for, 12 years now with Surround as a primary delivery platform on optical discs, multiple surround mixes as well as stereo. I'm not really a headphone guy, but I realize that most of the people my age are comfortable in a home theater. My kids are certainly not. They're not going to sit down, nor are they going to afford 5 B&W speakers. So I began to reach out some years ago in making surround presentations through headphones possible, and have developed a technology called Headphones XI that actually delivers downloads through iTunes and off the ROM files on our products that simulates the sound of my 5.1 room and my ears for delivery through headphones.
Hi, I'm David Chesky from Chesky Records and HD Tracks.
So my name is Nao Tsunoda from Sony Tokyo, and I'm so very honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Fang Bian from Hi-Fi Man. I'm the owner of Hi-Fi Man, and I'm the big fan of the portable audio things. Thank you very much.
My name is Alex Rawson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Odyssey Headphones.
All right. So I wanted to start, well, I guess we can start with hardware. And we have some interesting discussions to have here because we have Tyle Hertzen, Paul Barton. They have a lot to say about measurements and objective measurements with headphones. And then obviously we have Sony. We have now Taka Sonoda from Sony, Fang, and Alex to talk about the hardware, and well, Paul as well. But the reason Fang and Alex are on the panel is because there has been strong emergence in the last few years, since 2009 really, of planar magnetic headphone technology. I think it's kind of been a driver of the high-end, the ultra-high-end headphone audio sound. I wanted those guys, maybe Alex and Fang can talk about planar magnetic technology in headphones, how it differs from normal dynamic headphones. Alex? No.
So Planar technology has been around for a long time. For us, we started by creating line array speakers. It's very difficult for a young company to get into that business. So what we did is we miniaturized the driver and shoved it into a cheap natty headphone. When we did this, we realized that we had made some advancements within our driver technology, and it was pretty much a perfect storm for us to take our handmade headphone into a can jam and show people what our drivers were capable of. I don't know if many of you know about ribbon or planar drivers, but it's basically a thin film with circuits going through the film or etched on top of the film. For us, they're sandwiched in between a magnetic field. So pretty much the only thing that's moving the air is that thin film, and the thinner you can get that film, the better response you can get. That'd be my explanation of it.
All right. And then,
Hi, I want to talk about the planar driver headphones we are making. We actually different from Alex. The technology we have is from the electrostatic headphones. The idea is so before we make the Planar driver headphones, we tried many times making the electrostatic headphones. So we learn a lot from the electrostatic headphone technology, which is we use a super thin diaphragm, and so we believe that the thin diaphragm will make much less distortion and much better speed in the headphones replaying the music. Then. But the shortcoming of the thin diaphragm is you have to have much stronger magnet field to push the diaphragm. So the good part we got is we are a Chinese company, and China is the biggest rare earth supplier in the world. So we can use the top grade magnets of the world to get the most powerful magnet field in our headphones. So this is about the philosophy of our Planar driver headphones. Thank you.
Yeah, how many of you here have heard either Hi-Fi Man or Odyssey headphones? So actually, a lot of you have experience, so you know they're pretty remarkable headphones. And as far as planar magnetic technology goes, do you think there's much more we can do there going forward? I'm actually curious to know what the advancements are. I mean, is it stronger magnets, thinner films, both?
So the stronger magnets. So the idea is the diaphragm. When the diaphragm is very thin, the diaphragm will become very light. If you notice about the equations of the physics, you will know that the transfer energy means that the mass of the diaphragm, the diaphragm is moving, then transfer the energy to the ear to make the sound wave, and so the mass, the higher the mass of the diaphragm, the more energy can be transferred. So we benefit from the thin diaphragm and the light diaphragm. The thinner the diaphragm is, the lighter the diaphragm is. However, the mass of the diaphragm will be light, and the less energy can be transferred. That is why the sensitivity will be low if you use the same magnets. Then the only way to solve this is to use a very powerful magnet field or very powerful magnets.
Okay. I mean, for both of you, Odyssey and Hi-Fi Man, I mean, what are you're thinking of your next generation headphones? What's the emphasis more on, or is it both?
I think it's finding the balance. Most of the end users want lightweight. They don't want have to use a lot of power to drive the speakers. So it's finding that balance to be able to wear these things on your head comfortably and not have to spend an arm and a leg on an amplifier to drive them for good performance. So for me, we can make very, very, very efficient planar drivers, but it's trying to figure out where you go to make it more comfortable for us, at least.
Gotcha. Now, obviously, most of the headphones I think that we're still using are traditional dynamic type driver headphones, and I think there are still advances there to be made as well. Sony recently released a line of headphones, and clearly the R&D at Sony the capacity to do R&D there is remarkable. We actually have now Taka Sonoda, who is the head of Sony's entire headphone development team. So I wanted to ask him what you're doing. Obviously, the new headphones that you have, the MDR1R, which I don't know when they're going to be out available here. I think they're very good headphones. They're affordable at $300. Those reach out, and we're going to get to measurements in a second, out to 80 kilohertz. I mean, they genuinely measure out to 80 kilohertz. Can you talk about some of the advancements that Sony might be working on, or what you're working on to advance dynamic headphone?
Okay, so one of these keys to get these better sound reproduction is one of these important key is material of the diaphragm. Of course, there's much advanced technology like the planar magnet, but something like that. But the reason why we are sticking into our conventional dynamic driving is one of these big key is diaphragm material, and also as well as how to consist the acoustic construction on the backside of the diaphragm. So one of this reason is since every kind of the cavity, probably this has been automatically generated by the diaphragm and the magnetic circuit. So this kind of the has always considered as a cavity. So one of the important aspect is how to control the unnecessary resonance generated by this kind of this cavity. So. To control this better control for this, that kind of this resonance in the back cavity. So we still think conventional dynamic drive in it is as a more advantage in this. So this is the first reason, and the second reason is one of these good possible what necessary function in the diaphragm is high rigidity. And for the higher frequency reproduction, and also as well as high internal loss. So internal loss is a capability to convert this unnecessary vibration to the heat. So if we have got higher internal loss, it means less unnecessary vibration is mid to high frequency. Therefore, MDR1R, this is the latest model, so is going to be launched from Sony. It applies the very unique material, which is called LCP, liquid crystal polymer, to film for its diaphragm. This diaphragm also will have a very good tendency to have a high rigidity for high frequency reproduction, and also high internal loss for less coloration from the mid range to high range.
Well, thanks. Now, yeah, obviously these manufacturers are going to be doing, including Paul Barton, a lot of measurements too in all of this. But one thing that we're starting to see, John Atkinson at Stereophile has been doing it for a long time, or Stereophile has been doing it for a long time, measuring the components that they review. So there's a subjective and then the objective part of the review. Tyler Hertzens is a perfect match, really, for the Stereophile family, because that's what he does. He measures headphones, and I think people are wanting to see that, or interested in seeing that, at least in the Headphone community, measurements to correlate with subjective reviews. Paul Barton's also working on some innovations. I wanted you guys to talk about it, and then maybe as the manufacturers can talk about if any ideas pop in your head about these measurement discussions, feel free to also discuss. But Tyler, maybe you can talk about reviews, measurements, and how they work.
Sure. I think it's really important to make a distinction between the objective what's happening and the listening experience. And the important distinction to make is that a human experience is nothing like an objective measurement. They exist in two completely different domains. And there is an area where they intersect. There's a part where they intersect and they can inform each other, but they are fundamentally two different things. What I mean by that is if I look at a frequency response plot, I can fundamentally tell you whether there's a bad headphone. You know, this headphone is absolutely not flat. It's very far off from being flat. It has high distortion, and it's ringing like crazy. And fundamentally, that's not going to deliver a listening experience because there's a lack of fidelity. But at another point, you start getting closer to what one would consider neutral, to what one would say, okay, this looks like a reasonable set of measurements. And Paul can speak to this in a moment. There's a whole lot of uncertainty about whether those measurements are even accurate or meaningful. But the point is that once you get within a certain window, you can say, okay, this headphone is not distorting in the low frequencies. It's not ringing for very long. Its square wave top shape is relatively flat. Okay, that's good. Now, is this a good headphone, and will I like it? The answer is you have no idea, because the experience of listening is like a flavor. You know, what's the magnitude of chocolate versus apple? And the answer is, well, they're human experiences. They exist in a different domain than objective measurement. And so I think it's very important to understand that while we can measure things and while we can sort of sort through things and say, well, this this is a bad headphone, or this is a good headphone, but it looks like it may be a little bright, or it looks like it may be a little bass heavy, or that is a good opportunity to sort through headphones. On my website, on innerfidelity.com, up on the top bar, there'll be a thing called resources, and then when you go to that page, they'll show headphone measurements. And I've currently measured about probably approaching 400 different headphones. And it's a really good way, once you get a little familiar with what the measurements are, to be able to sort through headphones and go, well, that's obviously bad, this one may be good, but it's bass heavy and I don't like that. And so you can sort through a bunch of headphones to get it down to 4 or 5 headphones that you think might be good for you. But then at that point, the measurements will inform you in no way of whether you're actually going to like them or not. And at that point, you actually have to start listening and evaluating. And that why there's an importance in subjective reviewing, because I can maybe a little bit describe chocolate to you and apple to you and try to dance about architecture a little bit. But in the end, you have to listen to it. But I think Paul can talk a little bit towards the uncertainty of these measurements, that they are very, very difficult to take.
On that note, I'll just give you a bit of a backdrop to when asked by my colleagues to develop headphones, how I kind of approached the solution, or our solution to headphones. And for those of you who don't know, I utilize a facility in Canada called the National Research Council, which in the audio community is well known as a place where many Canadian loudspeaker companies have developed their products. PSB was the first company to approach NRC back in 1974, and since then I've been actively using the facility to better improve the way we evaluate. And one of the strong points of all the research that took place at NRC back in the late 70s and early 80s, which there are many AES journal papers published on the relationship between subjective evaluations and objective measurements, which is what has been talked about. And we've come up with what we think is conclusions to these experiments, and that is, number one is, most of the people, most of the time, agree on the relative qualities of a group of transducers. In this case, was loudspeakers. Second is that musical taste and musical experience are no prerequisites for being a good judge of sound. What that means is that even if you think you have a tin ear, put in a double-blind screen listening test, you will come up with the same answers. The difference between someone who's not that versed in describing, they just don't have the vocabulary to organize their thoughts and make judgments. But we do a bit of training and let the listeners come up with, we give them a list of adjectives to help them describe what it is they're hearing, so that we can actually quantify the listening experience and compare that with the measurements. And over the years, we've developed sort of the recipe that makes good speakers sound good in rooms. The third thing we've learned is that there is a strong correlation between the subjective evaluations of loudspeakers and the objective measurements of loudspeakers. And when I design loudspeakers, and in this case headphones, I can kind of predict what a person or the average population would score. So having that as a foundation for the methodology in determining what does sound good for people isn't any different with headphones. So a couple of years ago, well, let me just give you a little bit more background. When I went to NRC, I was introduced to Dr. Floyd Toole, who is well known for being the author and the person from NRC that did all this research, and I tapped into it and participated. And his boss at NRC was a fellow named Dr. Edgar Shaw. And Dr. Edgar Shaw is sort of the textbook source or the go-to person for who mapped the external ear and the pinna, mostly in pursuit of developing hearing aids and also doing audiometry testing for the military in Canada. And I've been able to pool on a lot of the research and also all the apparatus that he used back in the mid-70s. In particular, I use a device or a measurement system which was modified for his purposes called KEMAR, which is a torso with some mannequin with microphones at the end of a coupler. And we use a Zwislocki coupler, which was kind of at that time state-of-the-art in terms of representing the impedance of the ear canal, so that I can do on-ear with the pinna, which is KEMAR's pinna, and I can also sort of predict what's happening at the eardrum using this coupler. And now the challenge is I can do repeatable measurements. Unfortunately, this coupler was really only developed with the mindset to use it to do developments of hearing aids. So, as we all maybe know, or people on the panel know, the measurement systems that are currently available are not really very good above about 4 kilohertz. And when you measure them, you can do comparative measurements, but you really don't know what's happening at the eardrum. At that time, in the 70s, a postgraduate student, Mike Stinson, was hired by NRC to work with Edgar Shaw. And when Edgar retired, Mike took over his tasks and continued his research. And I'm currently working with him to develop a measurement system that will, in our hopes, it hasn't been developed yet, in our hopes will allow us to do measurements that are representative of what's appearing at the eardrum up to about 14 kilohertz, which today is unheard of. No measurement system out there will give you any indication as to what's really happening. So, as you can tell, I'm trying to approach this from a scientific viewpoint, create a measurement system which will actually raise the art of the science to a level where we can really do meaningful measurements that can be strongly correlated with listener preferences. And I was just talking to Sean Olive at CEDIA in September, who came into our booth, and he's a colleague or a friend who used to work with Floyd Toole at the National Research Council and then moved on to Harman when Floyd went there to do all of the subjective experiment setups for Harman's products. And he just told me that he's set up experiments now where they're going to be doing quite a few double blind screen tests using headphones. And the experimental design must be quite a challenge, because how do you hide headphones from people? I guess you have to blindfold them, and you can't let them take them on and off their head. Somebody else has to put it on their head. So that's a bit of a challenge. And I'm looking forward, as a matter of fact, next week in San Francisco, he told me that he's publishing a paper on the preliminary blind screen listening tests that he's been doing on headphones. So there's a lot going on, and I think the headphone business, not to say that any headphone people on this panel have headphones in this class, but to me, the variety of sounds that headphones have today kind of represent what I experienced when I first approached NRC with loudspeakers in the mid-70s. There was no consistency. It was a wide range of sounds. There was the East Coast sound with JBL, and there was the West Coast sound with AR and Advent, and you put those behind the screen, and it was day and night differences. Well, today, speakers are much more consistent because a lot of work has been done on what the target function needs to be and how do we determine what that target function is. Many people on the panel are talking about ways in which they're executing designs, but the first task at hand is to try and find out what it is you're shooting for. If you don't know what that is, it doesn't matter what materials you're using. If you don't know the target, then you're not going to get any kind of consistent results. So I've said enough.
So just a quick question, when are we going to see some of the results from the new measurement system you're developing? Quick answer.
From me?
Yeah, from you, Paul. Sorry.
We should have a working model around Christmas time. And I don't want to get into too many details because I might fall flat on my face if I don't get the system working, but I have a lot of confidence in the competence of the people that I've associated with, and these guys are acousticians that are world class. In fact, right now they're setting up a conference in Montreal and running a conference for the Acoustical Society of America, which focus on this project, these types of projects all the time. So I'm in the right, I'm with the right group of people, and as a manufacturer, I think we'll get closer to solving and making and raising the bar on headphones in general. And I think the whole industry will hopefully benefit from some of the results of this kind of work. And I can assure you, we'll be publishing papers and sharing our knowledge as an industry to try and raise the bar.
Fantastic. Tao, you want to follow up?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I am insanely envious of the resources that he has at his disposal, and anxiously await the results of the work they're doing, and hope I can bring it into my testing system, because those guys do terrific work up there. And Paul's told me a little bit more of the technical details of their coupler, and it's very, very exciting. He mentioned a Zwislocki coupler. The head that I use isn't even that good as a Zwislocki coupler, and I believe he's exactly right that measurements will give us a much narrower target than the range of stuff we're seeing now. So thank you very much for the work you're doing up there. I appreciate it deeply.
So do I. I mean, some of the details that you shared that I know we're not going to share here are very interesting, so I can't wait to hear it.
Well, it's turned up my passion for this industry, because I've been doing loudspeakers for so long, and now this is a bit of a change with the same goals in mind. So good sound reproduction.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Now, before we move on to software, because there's a lot of interesting discussion to have there, we're talking about the subjective, the preferences, listening preferences. Actually, Nataka came to my office recently, and we had this very interesting discussion where we were talking about Sony is actually measuring. They were looking not just at they were looking at the preferences. They were looking at music styles. Remember, we talked about that, and we were actually looking at the frequency of music as it shifts over the years. And we're looking at decade by decade and how the frequencies shift. Yeah, actually, can you share some of that now? Because that was actually interesting, and they actually use that as they developed their headphones.
Yes. We are very respecting the years of the measurement as well as music preference. So one of the project which has been done in the MDR's 1R is in the 1980s. So when we should talk about this bass, so it is always around. So we are talking about the 100 hertz. So since it is the peak spectrum of the kick drums, and it's also the bass is always located at the 100 hertz. But sometimes, when looking at the modern situation, music like electronic or this hip hop. So in this case, the peak spectrum of the bass is always located around 30 hertz to 40 hertz, and also this kind of this part accurate reproduction. So this area is one of the greatest key in these days. So since these changes to accommodate these changes, so we have research to many musicians, creators, and so sometimes DJs, and so we have had this kind of the result. Then MDR's 1R has been retuned as to accommodate this very low frequency area with this accurate rhythms. This is a big key for the new era of the headphones, and of course, so measurement reveals everything about this headphone acoustic conditions. But in our opinion, so headphone is acts like in a way sound field simulator. Headphone is a sound field simulator. So sometimes we have a very big stream, two different stream of the headphones in our lineup. So one is a hi-fi listening headphones, and the other is monitoring headphones. So we set the acoustic characteristics as to have a completely two different characteristics, which is one is when you listening to the classical music. So probably the ideal sound field for this kind of classical music is great music hall, and probably best seat in a good music hall. So this will be one of the ideal location. But on the other hand, so please consider about these musicians. Musicians listening to a more direct sound rather than than the audience. Since the audience will listen to the music with direct sound, with this full reflection of this music hall, and with this full of ambience, and this is completely different from these musicians listening to. So probably the musician is listening to a more direct sound that generates from generated from the musical instruments, more so in a closer distance and more as a direct sound, and so which is completely different from the audience is listening to. And so musicians, when it comes to musicians, so probably they want to listen to the music more precisely. So what they how does how does the musical instruments listen sounding. So therefore, we thought there would be there needs to be two completely different headphones, which is monitoring headphones and hi-fi listening headphones. That's our principle to drive how this headphones sound should be designed. And so more recent change in this idea is dance clubs. So when you're listening to this hi-fi listening headphone, then you're listening to dance music. So the best seat in the audience, best music hall with this dance music will make no sense. Therefore, we thought there should be a third sound field. Should be a third sound field, which is simulating the dance clubs. Therefore, we have launched MDR's XB series. Probably this is not good for you, but this is intentionally dedicated to the people who likes this dance music, and the best location for dance music should be the dance club. Therefore, this third generation, third stream of the headphone is simulating the dance clubs. Probably this is completely a different idea from the objective measurement. But this is really emotional things.
Right. Well, I wish we had more time to talk about it because we went over a whole bunch of cool objective data. I mean, it was actually fascinating. I wish we could share it all here. But while we're talking about music, I actually have questions for Fang and Alex, but I'm going to probably save them for Q&A if there's time. I want to segue to music since we're talking about music. I want to start with David Chesky. I want to just say I was at a recording session that he did for an album, Lenny White. It was a percussion album. It was binaural, which is what we're going to talk about with David today. I was there at the recording session, so that was cool. I could establish being in the venue, listening, and then comparing it to the final result. And it was fascinating. And I thought he got there really, really well. So anyways, I'm going to let David talk about binaural recording because I think nobody's doing more, at least that I'm aware of, to serve the hi-fi audience, making headphone listening better through recordings right now than David. I just met Mark, so maybe he's doing as much too, and we'll let him talk about that in a second. But David, why don't you talk about the binaural and binaural plus?
Anyway, Jude was at one of our recording sessions, and Lenny White from Chick Corea's band was the drummer, and on track 7, Lenny stepped out, and Jude's on that track playing drums. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, right.
Can you hear? Anyway. Okay. So anyway, we're doing a new thing for us. You know, we used to do sound field recordings. We're switching over to binaural recordings. We have some dummy heads. And basically, we're doing this thing where we're recording everything now in binaural, and we also put in, we call it Binaural Plus because we put diffuse field equalization in afterwards, and it plays back really well on speakers. And the reason we do that is because we have part 3, which in the future we're going to be able to do binaural on 2 speakers in your living room. So that's what the final thing is. But in the meantime, everything we do, we're recording in binaural, and we're putting out this whole series with this thing, technology. Has been around for a while, but like I said, it plays on both platforms. So that's pretty much it there.
You mentioned the doctor,
Dr. Chesky?
Yeah, we have a...
the guy who's helping you out.
Oh, Edgar Schwery.
So anyway, we're working at Princeton. We have a joint venture with the physics lab there where we're developing these type of filters and technologies to do crosstalk cancellation for speakers. So it's really it's a weird thing because the lab is set up to design plasma engines for rocket ships, but for some reason the head of the physics lab is an audio guy, and years ago he got into this, so they started another laboratory to do 3D audio. And that's what we're involved with them. So hopefully by CES, we have it set up in New York where you can hear binaural on 2 speakers, and we'll maybe demo it at CES where you can hear that. But we can set up height with a 360-degree sound field with 2 speakers with this crosstalk technology. I know you guys, see with headphones you don't have to worry about crosstalk, but the speaker world does. And I think that's what messes up, most of the stuff you hear. We're living in an artificial world. Whether the answer is binaural with crosstalk cancellation, high order ambisonics, that's to be found out. But I personally think in the future, with these iPhones and all that, everybody's going to take a picture of their pinna. It's going to feed it into a computer. It'll be high-order ambisonics. It'll figure out what your ear is, and then you'll have your own special binaural that'll sound great. The problem with binaural now is your head doesn't match my head, doesn't match this head, so it's a guessing game whose ears matches the dummy ears. So that's why we have a few heads. We try different ears, and it's still, a pot shot because for some people it works phenomenal, and some people it doesn't work that well. But we're learning some tricks of the trade to make it sound even better.
But even though it's a pot shot, I want to give David a lot of credit. He is expending tremendous effort and expense to get this right. So even here, we've been listening to recordings and evaluating the imaging of the recordings relative to recordings that he'd previously made. He's trying to assess constantly the best way to get the most realistic, most immersive binaural image. And it's really... I mean, he's so passionate about it, and I applaud him for all the effort. And I've heard some of the other recordings he's done recently, and I can't wait to get them all. But Mark, I'm less familiar with the stuff you're doing at AIX. So but I know you're working hard too on this. Why don't you talk about that and what it means?
Wow, that one works. Part of my PhD as a music student at UCLA back in the mid-'80s was heavily involved in binaural sound. I've always been very enthralled with the idea of being able to capture an environment, including height and rear. So I took my stereo Nagra, which is a portable machine, DC-powered reel-to-reel machine, and a Fritz II Neumann KU81U head at that point, and I did my dissertation as a binaural piece. So I did a lot of psychoacoustic research at the time, and traveled in a hot air balloon with the binaural head. Fritz and I became very friendly for a week. Went up in a hot air balloon, went down in a cave, and went out on a boat. We went for lots of drives, went out deep into the forest, and incorporated all these things basically in a music concrete piece. And then during my doctoral defense, all the faculty members, rather than just thumbing through a score, actually listened to the piece through headphones. And it's a marvelous way. I've done a lot of recording, actually, for Pasadena Symphony. It's still available, I think, for Newport Classics, where I'm hanging a binaural head up in front of and recording the Saint-Saëns Organ Concerto. It works. It really works. I mean, I would come home and put the headphones on my kids, and their heads would jerk around like this. It was pretty tricky for a 4-year-old to figure out what was going on. Might have been cruelty, but they've survived into their 20s now. I discovered a piece of technology about 5-6 years ago called Smith Research. Some of you might be aware of the the couple of brothers, Michael and Stephen Smith, in Northern Ireland, and they have a Los Angeles office. And I was invited out to their office. My recordings are in surround and very aggressive in surround, using lots of stereo pairs of microphones during the sort of recording sessions that we do. I found that the sort of Windham Hill approach to being very close to guitars and very close to percussion, very close to the soundboard of a piano appealed to me more and gave me a more intimate musical experience. And so I said, you know, I'm great with the idea of people listening in surround through their home theaters, and in Chicago up at the Exponent show, I'll have a big room with 5 speakers in it. I would encourage you not to walk by thinking it's home theater, because it's really great sound with picture. But the next generation of people actually listening to stuff are all about headphones. So the Beats Headphones guys came into my room with this Guimar head and did a whole bunch of alignments, and Trent Reznor came by. The other part of my building has Astound Sound, which is a processing that creates a 3-dimensional sound field through DSP. Well, I went out to the Smith Research office, and I sat there, and they put in a couple of microphones to do this personal customization with the impulse responses and directionality with a motion tracker and the rest of some pretty high fidelity equipment. And at the end of the day, take it from me, I would not say this unless it was true, sitting when they finally did it in my studio, taking and listening to the speakers in 5.1, moving your head back and forth, and I do put drums very aggressively on the right in a stage mix and the piano equally spaced on the other side, taking the headphones off and listening to the speakers, and then putting the headphones on with motion tracking back and forth, they're virtually identical. The speaker is 8 feet out in front of my head, or 84 inches in front of my nose. The center is the toughest one to do. And so I started thinking maybe it would be an interesting parallel to take the output of this box and that sort of 85% realization. And I have the box sitting on my desk over in the Evergreen room. You're welcome to come by. It never ceases to bring a smile to somebody's face when I isolate the speakers through a standard set of headphones through this box from a surround mix off of a DVD or a Blu-ray disc, and isolate each one of the speakers. As soon as I hit the right surround speaker, and the sound now in a standard set of headphones is coming out from over your right shoulder, the smiles happen. Wow, and then switch them all back on. So you can compare traditional stereo, which my problem with traditional stereo is it comes right out from the center of my brain. And I've been doing that ever since, you know, I started listening to headphones back when I was 10, 11 years old. It's a whole different experience when I can then use the panorama of mixing 5.1 and isolate where instruments are. And I want that to translate to people of a younger generation so that I can get them involved in what I'm so thrilled about, which is listening to music in surround. And I can't do that with a standard set of headphones, no matter how fidelity-wise they are. Reproducing the sound, because it's coming out from the middle of my brain, and I lack that sense of being in the midst of that band or that group of speakers. I mean, other than a sombrero with little Bose speakers dangling around the edge, I haven't figured out yet how to get the surround experience portable so that the younger generation who are listening on the bus or with their iPhones or portable devices will be able to experience that. The Smith guys have really nailed something. So rather than having everybody have to go out and buy a $3,000, roughly $3,000 box, and getting, some of you might have been through some of the experience of, they show up at some shows sometimes and actually do this customization. I'll take my ears and my studio, sit in the middle of it, and I process the output of my mixes in 5.1, whether they're audience mixes or stage perspective mixes or even stereo, and then translate that, capture the output, put it on the ROM part of the discs that we're releasing, or if you go to iTunes right now and go to Nitty Gritty Surround, which is one of the albums we did years ago with Jennifer Warrens and the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, there's now a Headphones XI, which is our trade name for this, version of that, and just listen to the regular stereo and listen to the surround version, the headphone version, and now without iTunes actually knowing what's going on, it's built into the title, you can actually download mixes that are dedicated for surround headphone delivery. It's really pretty remarkable. It's the most amazing technology that I've run into in the last 5 or 10 years for sort of expanding the market possibilities for this surround field or surround recordings that I make.
So is that the Nitty Gritty Surround, is that something we can demo through iTunes?
Absolutely. Nitty Gritty Surround, there's one called the Old City String Quartet. I mean, I put probably a dozen of them up there that are I produce a record, I put those tracks actually on the discs so that you, with a ROM drive or a BD-ROM drive, you can pull those files off immediately and just load them into your portable device and travel with a surround headphone mix. Or I put them all up on iTunes and you can download. If you come by, or I'll give you a card, you can write to me and I can point to some of the exact URLs to get the things, because it's noticeably different. Is it 100% spot on? No, but we're moving in that direction, and I love the idea of being able to take a picture. I was thinking more of the soles of shoes. I'm a runner, so you get custom shoes, you push down into a mold, right, and send that off to the shoemaker. Well, I was thinking maybe the same thing could work with the ears, but we need to be able to customize, because everybody's ears are unique and they filter just a little bit differently. Are they common enough so you can definitely get what the difference is? Yes, but I think we're moving obviously in that direction.
All right, cool. David, obviously to try your recordings, HD Tracks is probably going to be the best place, because they have sample snippets for that.
Yeah, we have them too. And I think what Mark is doing cool, because we have the box in New York, and that it's amazing what that Smythe box can do. But like he said, the problem is you have to sit there and sweep your room. You have to put microphones to work, and to get that thing going, it has to be programmed for each person. But it's going in the right direction, and I would encourage you guys to download those tracks of his, because it's pretty mind-boggling what these guys in Ireland are doing for headphones. And one day, if that's the standard, it's really cool. What we're doing is sort of like that. The beauty of this. It's two different things. What we're doing is we're going out and recording that space instantly in binaural. What he's doing, and it could be, is taking records that you would just hear on stereo or 5.1, and then it's amazing what they sound like. It's mind blowing. Yeah, you're not. You really feel like in the room. If the speakers were 100 feet away from us in this room and you put on the headphones, you would bet $100 that the speakers were 100 feet away from you. It's amazing. So I think in the future, if this technology really takes off and people really figure out how to customize the shoe for your ear, what he's talking about, in theory, with a portable device, you could sit under a coconut tree in Tahiti and have the greatest sound system in the world on your head. I mean, it's amazing. And it will go there one day. It's just a matter of when. So, but in the meantime, we're doing another thing. It's the binaural to try to capture, in the real space, what's going on that end with our artists. And that's it's available on HD Tracks as well.
How many of you here have heard good binaural recordings? And I don't mean the barbershop. Something other than the snip, like really nobody. You really should try it. We do a video on Headphone, a series called Headphone TV. Haven't done one in quite a while though, but we did one on one of the recordings, the Explorations in Space and Time recording with Chesky. And I say in the video you should watch it with headphones. And so what we do, I don't remember how many minutes in, is we start mixing in the drums. And the response, if you look at the YouTube comments, is like, "Oh my God, I thought somebody was banging on my door." I mean, it's because it's so out of head. And like, I thought there was a party at my next door neighbor's house, at 3 in the morning when I was listening to it. It's that convincing. It can be that convincing. So you really should try what Mark is doing, what David is doing, because it's really. And Tal, you had a follow up. Did you want to talk about?
Yeah, that mic doesn't work. One of the things that has kept coming back to me thinking about this panel meeting, Jude often says he thinks the future of headphones is more and more custom IEMs and so on and so forth. And we had a panel on Friday about custom IEMs, and Jerry Harvey was demoing this system on Friday that's a laser system to take the impression of your ear. And as I've thought more and more about it and heard more and more about this stuff. I don't know if you've seen the Parrot Zic headphone, but it's got all sorts of DSP processing in it. They sound okay, and the balance is fairly good, but the thing that's amazing is how much processing is in this headphone. And I've begun to get this idea that one of these days, your high-end headphone audio dealer is going to be your audiologist, and you're going to go into your audiologist, and they're going to take impressions of your ear physically, and then they're going to have some kind of gadget. I came out of the world in the military and sonar, and headphones are also microphones. Well, maybe you can ping your ear and look at the reflection that's coming off the ear to make some measurements. But the point is, or maybe they'll have a nice set of calibrated headphones and they'll put capillary microphones in and do just like the Smith Reel equalizer. But to me, the interesting thing that really may be coming down the road on this is that this incredible level of customization, and it comes from a lot of these people doing really hard work and just knowing that the possibility is out there and then just pushing and pushing and pushing for it. But when the day comes and it pops, like this laser scanner of your ear, it may just be easy. It may be that you walk out of your audiologist with a disc, and on the disc is the shape of your ear, and it's the head-related transfer function of you, and it may be even your musical preferences, like Ultimate Ears. They'll play some stuff, and then you'll be able to adjust what you like so your preference is designed into it. And then you walk out with a little disc or a memory card, and then you send it off to whoever it is that is deciding that they're going to participate in this stuff, and there's some sort of a standard thing. So you send the file off to PSB, and then out comes your headphones with your ability to completely 3D virtualize this stuff. And really, that thought is only the last couple of days after hearing these guys.
Yeah.
Because I thought, oh, no, it's too hard. It's too complicated.
Yeah, there's
But
some cool
it's
stuff
not.
coming down the pike.
Yeah.
All right, well, listen, we have just under 10 minutes. We'll just say we have 10 minutes. Let's do Q&A. I have actually a couple questions. Fang, you wanted to say something real quick? Sure, please do. Grab a mic.
So before the end of this talk, I want to declare something. We are working with Smith Realizer right now.
Oh, you're working with Smith on a project, you mean?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a project. The project is about put their code of Smith Realizer code into our new generation players firmware. In other words, in the future, it is possible to use a HiFi audiophile player and regular headphones to hear the real 3D surround sound.
Cool. So, by the way, all you headphone audio enthusiasts, headphones were often considered kind of the second-class citizens of hi-fi world, but you're going to find it would probably be the key to the greatest immersion. See, we were just on the forefront, guys. But anyways, so Q&A. Go ahead, you up in the back
I have
there.
a question for Mark. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to listen to in the future is stuff that I already have, some stereo, some 5.1, some 7.1. The stereo, you lose a lot of the positional information, obviously. Is there the potential at some time, based on your experience, to take something like 5.1, stereo 7.1, do a transformation to a stereo for earphones, and be able to preserve a lot of the information that the 5.1, 7.1 would have in your listening room with round speakers, but that you would lose normally going into 2.0?
It's more or less what we have been talking about in a way. I thought you were going the other direction. Is there a way to take my standard stereo LPs and stuff that I've been listening to in 2-channel and envelop you? There's that too. There's the extraction, and then there's the ability to take and model any space. I mean, it really is going to be a file with your signature on it, and then the delivery of whatever multi-channel source you have will be customized to whatever your filtering is for your ears. We're on the verge of that, and actually it's being accomplished. What would be better than listening to an AIX recording through the mixing engineer's ears, mine, in my room? And you didn't have to spend $250,000 for the room. I mean, people fly, literally, I had a guy fly from Russia. There's a guy next week coming from Boston just for the day. Fly to Boston, sit in my room for 2 hours, and fly home. Just so that, and one of the guys from Vancouver said, Mark, out there on the headfi.org, and I haven't been there a lot, I got to start migrating there a little bit more with some of my online time.
I agree.
That the AI, I will, there's not a lot of time in my life these days, but that there is, you get the signature room, and certainly the AIX room is one of those. It's a room that's really superb place to listen to music.
Yes, sir. I was wondering, supposing in a few years that you can get individualized transfer functions loaded into like a little SD card, and whether the headphone or the amp, something will have a DSP and it will process it. Would that create a new kind of reference platform for the headphone itself, to where you no longer have to worry so much about creating all these individualized response, which you just focus on a reference headphone that is completely flat and then have the DSP add the HRTF on top of that?
Have you heard of a company called Line 6? They are the largest musical instrument company, electronic music instrument company in the world now, bigger than Fender and the rest of them. And that's exactly what they do, except they do it with musical instrument amplifiers. So my son buys a $3,000 Mesa Boogie amp. Gotta have it, Dad. Pickup truck to haul it around. I think he's got 3 friends with thrown out backs because this thing is huge. It makes a certain sound. It's got tubes and all that stuff. And I have a little Line 6 Spider amp that it's lightweight, a couple of speakers in it, and it's got a switch on the front. And I can turn it into a Marshall. I can turn it into a Princeton Reverb. I can turn it into any variety because they are acoustically modeling the output of the actual electronics from a Marshall amp. Why can't that apply in exactly the same way to a certain sound that you want through a certain grade of speaker or headphones? It can. We're headed in that direction.
You need like just an even headphone.
That's right. Apply the EQ before you get to your headphones.
And I think you were asking if the goal should be to create perfectly neutral headphones so that, right? Yeah. And I think that's what Paul was addressing earlier. The truth is that the personal preferences and stuff like that is narrower and closer to neutral than the headphones that we're listening to now. And yes, the goal should be to get more technically proficient neutral headphones. Now there may be some room to dial in some flavor in there, and of course what we're talking about here isn't happening tomorrow, and what we're talking about isn't going to be cheap, and so there will always be room for less expensive but good sounding headphones. But I take your point, and you're right in that headphones should be more neutral than they are today.
Any other questions? I think we're actually out of time, and the next talk I think may be coming in. Oh, yeah, actually, Alex, go ahead. From Odyssey.
Just wanted to say, if anybody uses digital audio workstations or is a musician or anything like that, there's a plugin that you can get called made by Longcat. And what it allows you to do is take an element, whatever track you want, and spatialize it, put it wherever you want out of 2 channels. So Longcat, if you want to kind of experience it, is a cool plugin.
All right, thanks, Alex.
By the way, I want to respond to Tile. I think.
Okay.
Okay. When I visit the Smith Realizer Los Angeles office, they actually are using a Stax 2020. It's an inexpensive statistic headphones, and when they use that to simulate their speakers, it works pretty well. In other words, I believe that the headphones we are using right now, if it is neutral, I mean they are good enough to, most of the hi-fi grade headphones are good enough to simulate the 3D.
Thanks, Fang. All right, guys, thanks for coming. Hope you enjoyed it. It was a great panel. Thank you to the panel for coming out.